Hello, I'm R.A. Spratt, and I want to welcome people joining us this week on the Yoto podcast platform. Now, just so you know, most of the bedtime stories I tell here are standalone stories. But over the last year, we have been dipping in and out of the epic story of Odysseus, the hero from ancient Greek mythology. And this week, I'm going to be telling the second last installment of that tale. So if you can jump in right here, that'll be fine. I'm sure you'll pick it all up. But if you did want to go back to the beginning and start from the first episode, you can search back through the episodes. The first episode's called Odysseus, as told by Nanny Piggins, and it dropped on January 8th, 2025. Or you can go back and listen to any of the other episodes. You're going to find fairy tales, myths, legends, and mysteries. I hope you enjoy them all. Now let's get into it. Hello and welcome to Bedtime Stories with me, R.A. Spratt. All right. Well, before we get into today's story, I don't think I've got much news for you. It's still winter and cold here in Bowral. It's the school holidays. I hope if you're on school holidays, you're having a good time. When this drops it'll drop on Wednesday, the 9th of July. So this is kind of late notice, but if you're interested, I am going to be doing story time at the Kinokuniya bookstore in Sydney, which is, it's in the shopping centre opposite the town hall in Sydney at 2 p.m. on Thursday, the 10th of July. So if you'd like to come and see me, it's at 2 p.m. I think go to the Kinokuniya's website. They should have the details there. You can book tickets there. So come along and say hello. I'm not sure what I'm going to be doing. I don't know that anybody's told me yet, but they say they want me to do a story. So I'll probably do one of the Greek myths. We'll see. Well, I'll bring along a few books and I'll let whoever turns up vote and decide. So anyway, if you do want to see me, I'll be there. What other news? I tried to organise a tour of New Zealand for the Christmas shows, and I couldn't get it to work out with the theatre bookings. So I'll have to postpone that and try again to come over to New Zealand next year. But good news for the Christmas shows if you are in Tasmania, because I have managed to book the Theatre Royal in Hobart to do the Christmas show down there on December 13th this year. So I'll be doing the Christmas show in Hobart, Canberra and Sydney this year in December, obviously. And tickets will go on sale hopefully by August. So more details to come. And for all the listeners in Adelaide, I know you have been asking me to go to Adelaide. I will get to Adelaide. Hopefully I'll do the Christmas show there next year, or maybe I'll bring a Friday Barnes show there next year. I'm getting there. I am working my way around Australia. All right, well, let's get into today's story. So today we are going to go back to Scandinavia because, as I explained a couple of weeks ago, I have got a trip coming up to Sweden. So I've been learning Swedish, which has been a lot of fun. I've really enjoyed it. I love learning languages, but I think this is the most fun I've had learning a language since I learned Italian, and maybe even more fun. And so it is helping me with my pronunciation. But if you are from Scandinavia, I do apologize. I know it's a struggle. Yeah. I thought the Greek mythology stories were hard to pronounce the names, but these are challenging too. Anyway, let's just get into it because you're here for a story. So I should begin. Okay, so today we're doing the story of the time Thor's hammer was stolen, as told by Nanny Piggins. "What story shall I tell you today?" asked Nanny Piggins. It was midnight and a Tuesday, and all the children had a maths test at 9 a.m. the following morning, so Nanny Piggins thought that she should probably put them to bed. But Nanny Piggins firmly believed no child could be expected to go to sleep without being told a story. "Well, why don't you tell us another one about Thor?" asked Michael. "Yes," said Samantha. "You said you knew a good story about his hammer." "Yeah, Mjolnir, the hammer the dwarves made for him when Loki was trying to trick them," added Derek. "Oh, yes," said Nanny Piggins. "There was a big drama about that. Okay, snuggle in, Michael. I've got a dozen cherry danishes in my nightstand, in case I need a midnight snack. It is midnight, so it'd be inappropriate not to eat them." Once they all had a Danish in their mouths, Nanny Piggins began the tale. "It all began when Thor woke up one morning and realised his hammer was gone," began Nanny Piggins. "And having a suspicious mind, Thor immediately assumed it had been stolen. Although, to be fair, it was a reasonable suspicion because Mjolnir, his hammer, was so mighty and powerful that very few people were strong enough to steal it. In fact, no people. It would have to have been a particularly powerful god or monstrously strong creature. But anyway, I digress. The main thing is Thor was really cross. Was he not a morning person? Asked Samantha. Apparently not, said Nanny Piggins. I know some people fly into a rage over next to nothing if they haven't had their first cup of coffee yet. Or if they haven't had their first chocolate croissant yet, observed Derek. Nanny Piggins had flown into a rage just the previous week with the postman because he'd rung the doorbell 60 seconds before her chocolate croissants were due to come out of the oven. After shoving 3 croissants into her mouth, Nanny Piggins did come to her senses and chase after the postman to apologise. Unfortunately, he was on a motorbike and was able to outrun her. But then Nanny Piggins went back home, ate another 2 dozen croissants, and summoned the energy to bake the postman a chocolate cake, which she then dropped by the post office, and all was forgiven. At least it would have been if the ladies behind the counter hadn't cracked and eaten all the cake before the postman came back from doing his round. But Nanny Piggins didn't know about that, so she thought the postman hid behind a bush every time he saw her now because he was eccentric. Anyway, Nanny Piggins continued. Thor was not a morning person, a midday person, an afternoon person, or even an evening person. It's not so much that he was angry, it's just that he was such a mighty, powerful, good-looking and hairy god that no one ever tried to check his behaviour. Thor was a lot like a 2-year-old that way, except bigger, and he carried a hammer that caused lightning bolts. So try to imagine a 2-year-old who can cause electricity to shoot through the sky, and you've got a pretty good idea what Thor was like. Now, everybody likes 2-year-olds. They're cute and they mispronounce things in the most adorable way, but they do know how to throw a tantrum, and so did Thor. When Thor woke up and Mjolnir was missing, he totally lost it. His head shook, his fists clenched, and his great red beard quivered with rage. Really, it was lucky his hammer had been stolen, so he couldn't smash things with it. Instead, Thor had to try and solve his problem, so he went in search of Loki. The god of mischief, who everyone thinks is Thor's brother, but he's actually Thor's adopted blood uncle, asked Michael. Correct, said Nanny Piggins. Well, why? Did he think Loki had stolen the hammer? Asked Samantha. No, said Nanny Piggins. Thor was known for his muscles, not his mind. He never thought to suspect Loki of things, even when he had clearly done them. But also because Thor knew Loki always skipped leg day, arm day, ab day, in fact all the days at the gym, so he didn't have big enough muscles to lift Mjolnir, let alone steal it. Because Loki was a bit of a Bramwell, said Samantha. Yes, indeed, said Nanny Piggins. Now, for new listeners to this podcast, Bramwell was Nanny Piggins' brother. She had 13 identical 14-uplet sisters who were all brilliantly evil, each in their own unique way. But she also had Bramwell, who was thoroughly no good. According to Nanny Piggins, there had been many Bramwell Pigginses throughout history, and they had all shared this characteristic. Loki Bramwell Piggins, continued Nanny Piggins, was adopted by Odin, because you see, it's not uncommon throughout the history of the Piggins family for the female Pigginses to try to put the Bramwells up for adoption. Did you ever do that to your brother Bramwell? Asked Michael. No, of course not, said Nanny Piggins. Putting your brother up for adoption is wrong. But my sister Gretel did it 3 times. But the families who adopted him kept sending him back, so she gave up eventually. Then my sister Anthea tried baking him into a pie and selling him to a busload of Colombian tourists. It caused quite an international incident. So much food poisoning. Anyway, Thor burst into Loki's bedroom at Asgard. Loki, the most awful thing has happened, cried Thor. You've gone bald, guessed Loki. No, said Thor, quickly checking in the mirror to be sure. You've contracted a wasting illness, and your muscles will be gone by the end of the week, guessed Loki. No, said Thor. You found out about that time your mother dropped you on your head as a baby, guessed Loki. What? Oh, nothing, said Loki. So what is the awful thing that happened? Mjolnir, my mighty hammer, has been stolen, said Thor. Oh, said Loki. So, why don't you go to Bunnings Hardware and get another one? My hammer was forged by magical dwarves out of solid magical fudge, said Thor. They don't sell hammers like that at Bunnings Hardware. No, agreed Loki, which is a shame. If they did, people would love them. They'd be too busy licking their hammers to worry about home renovation. I need you to find it for me, said Thor. Well, why don't you find it yourself? Asked Loki. Because I am too good and too noble, said Thor. I don't know where thieves go. You're the conniving, cowardly, sneaky, mischievous one. You know much more about thieves than me. True, agreed Loki, because while he had many faults, he was not a liar. Actually, he was a liar, but he didn't lie about things like that. Help me, pleaded Thor, please. What will you do for me if I do help you? Asked Loki. Thor thought about this for a moment. I won't kill you with my bare hands. Okay, I can see how that is a good deal, said Loki. Come on, let's visit Freya. You think Freya stole it? Cried Thor. Now, Freya was Thor's sister. She was the goddess of love and war, and like many Viking women, she was utterly terrifying. Even the other gods feared her, because like Thor, she could throw tantrums. But Thor's tantrums just involved him smashing things with his hammer, whereas when Freya threw tantrums, it was next level. She got creative about it. She used physical and psychological violence. It made you want to be smashed by a hammer just to get it over with. No, I don't think Freya stole it, but she can help us, said Loki. Luckily, when Thor and Loki went to Freya's chamber, she was in a good mood. She'd had a lovely raspberry tart for breakfast and was feeling very happy with the world. Freya, a wonderful sister, said Thor, could you please do us a favour? For my brother and my adopted blood uncle, of course, said Freya. I would do anything to help family. Could you please, pretty please, lend us your feathered cloak? Asked Loki. He and Thor then took a step back, just in case she blew her stack. The feathered cloak was Freya's second most favourite possession. When she wore it, she gained bird-like powers, including the ability to fly. And as you may know, if you have siblings of your own, there is nothing a sibling hates more than lending something to another sibling. Thor and Loki held their breaths, waiting to see how Freya would respond. Of course, my dear, said Freya. Be my guest, enjoy. So Loki slipped on the feathered cloak, transformed into a bird, and took off into the sky, flying swiftly to Jotunheim, the land of the giants, where Thrym was king. Loki figured that the king of the giants was probably the only person alive strong enough to lift Mjolnir. But the Norse gods were always warring with the giants, so Thrym was someone you had to be very polite to, because constant war can cause grudges. Ah, Thrym, said Loki, lovely to see you. You're looking tall and gianty today. What do you want, Pipsqueak? Asked Thrym. Oh, nothing, said Loki. It's you who I thought might want something. Perhaps the chance to be helpful by returning Mjolnir, Thor's mighty hammer. Ha ha ha, said Thrym. Oh dear, don't say Thor lost his hammer. Did he drop it when he was building something? Perhaps putting up a little birdhouse? No, we think maybe someone stole it, said Loki. Someone big and strong, perhaps. You wouldn't know anyone who meets that description, would you? Ha ha! It was me, declared Thrym. It was me. I bested Thor, god of thunder. Well, you snuck him while he was sleeping, said Loki. Well, I wouldn't do it when he was awake. He might have bopped me on the nose, said Thrym. Understandable, said Loki. Thor often bopped Loki on the nose, and he didn't like it either. But now you've had your fun and done whatever household repairs you needed a hammer for, could you please return Mjolnir? It would make Thor ever so happy, or at least much less cross. Yes, I will return it, said Thrym, because I stole it for a very particular reason. There is something I want Thor to give to me. Okay, that's good. We're happy to bargain, said Loki. What do you want? Freya's hand, said Thrym. Her hand, said Loki. In marriage, said Thrym. I don't want you to cut her hand off and just give me that. I want to marry her, all of her, including her hand, and make her my wife, queen of the giants. Right, okay. The only thing is, I think Freya would rather have her hand cut off, said Loki. I don't care, said Thrym. That is my price. If you want the hammer Mjolnir back, you must bring me Freya as my bride. Okay, said Loki, and he flew home to tell Thor. Now, being tall and strong and good-looking and a god, Thor had a lot of self-confidence. So when he heard Thrym's demand, it sounded reasonable enough to him, so he picked up a bridal gown and veil and took them straight round to Freya's chamber. Hey, Freya, said Thor, you're looking lovely. I just need you to do a little thing for me. Anything for my darling brother, said Freya. Oh, great, said Thor. Then just pop on this white dress and this long white veil and come with me for a little 8-day journey. That's a bridal veil, said Freya. Is it? Said Thor. I wouldn't know. I don't know a lot about fashion. I don't wear many clothes myself. I like to have my muscles out where I can see them. Where do you want to take me wearing a bridal veil and gown? Asked Freya. Oh, just for a little ride in my goat-cart, said Thor. Yes, where to? Asked Freya. Oh, just over to Jotunheim, land of the giants, said Thor. And why must I dress as a bride? Asked Freya. Well, it turns out that Thrym, king of the gods, thinks you're so lovely that he'd like to marry you, said Thor. Congratulations! I am not marrying a giant, screamed Freya. Oh, please, said Thor. If you don't, he won't give me my hammer back. You would give your sister to a giant who our family has been at war with for millennia in exchange for a hammer? Not just any hammer, said Thor. This is Mjolnir. The fact that you name your hammer, screeched Freya, makes it even worse. That you can hold a carpentry tool at greater value than your sister. Well, I do like you, but if I smash you on the ground, you don't cause lightning, said Thor. Mercifully, at this point, Freya got so angry she could no longer speak. She just vibrated with intense visceral rage. The ground shook, the furniture rattled, Thor stumbled, and even Freya's necklace, Brisingar, her first most cherished possession, burst off her neck because so much anger was shooting out of every pore in her body. I'll take that as a no then, said Thor. Freya did not respond. She stormed off, but only because she knew her father Odin would be cross if she strangled Thor with his own beard. Oh dear, said Thor. I'm never going to see my Mjolnir again. Maybe, maybe not, said Loki, bending down to pick up the pieces of Brisingar. I have an idea. But Thrym won't give Mjolnir back if he doesn't get his bride, said Thor. Yes, but brides wear veils, said Loki, and veils hide a bride's face. Huh? Said Thor. You can wear the bridal gown and veil and Brisingar the necklace, and he'll think you are Freya. I can't do that, cried Thor. That would make me look womanish. And what's wrong with looking womanish? Asked Loki. Freya's a woman, and she's one of the most fearsome warriors in all of Asgard. But wearing a dress would be embarrassing, said Thor. Yes, I look amazingly handsome in a steel breastplate and cape, but I'm not sure I could look fabulous in a dress. It would hide too many of my muscles. Do you want your hammer back or not? Asked Loki. Oh, all right, said Thor. And so, 20 minutes later, Thor and Loki set out for Jotunheim. Thor was dressed in the bridal gown and veil and Freya's necklace, and Loki was dressed as Freya's lady-in-waiting. They journeyed for 8 whole days. As the goat cart rumbled across the land, the mountains trembled and the earth burned with fire. Why? Asked Michael. I'm not sure, said Nanny Piggins, but they're very particular about that bit in the original epic poem. I assume it was for dramatic effect. If it was just an ordinary goat cart ride, it wouldn't be very godly. Anyway, when the bridal goat cart arrived at Jotunheim, Thrym was delighted. He ordered his people to decorate the great hall for the wedding, and he made his cooks prepare a mighty feast for his new bride. Underneath the bridal veil, Thor perked up when he found out being a bride meant he would get a feast. Oh, do you think there'll be chocolate cake? Thor whispered to Loki. Shh, said Loki. "You don't want Thrym to hear your manly voice and realise you're not Freya." Cooks began to bring out the food from the kitchen. "Don't worry," said Thor. "I'm not planning to do any talking for the next few hours." And indeed, Thor didn't talk, because instead he ate. He ate and ate and ate and ate. Over the course of those hours, Thor ate 70 chocolate cakes, 12 vats of blancmange, and 200 cherry danishes, and he washed the whole thing down with 3 barrels of mead. The cooks in the kitchen struggled to make food as fast as he ate it. Thrym was astonished. He whispered to Loki, who he thought was a lady-in-waiting, "My, your mistress Freya eats a vast amount. I've never seen a woman eat so much." "Oh, yes," said Loki, pretending to be the lady-in-waiting, "but only because she is so anxious to marry you that she has not eaten for 8 whole days." "Oh," said Thrym, "I guess that explains it. So she's really excited to marry me? Well, that's good. I must say, I can't wait. I'm going to have a little peek under that veil and see if she will honour me with a kiss." So Thrym, king of the gods, bent down and lifted Thor's bridal veil and leaned in with his lips. But as his head dipped under the veil, he was startled by the sight of Thor's eyes and immediately recoiled. "Oh my! Freya looks so angry. There is fire burning from her eyes," said Thrym. "Oh, of course," said Loki. "That is because she was so eager to come here and marry you that she has not slept for 8 whole nights." "Oh, wow," said Thrym. "I never thought I would be so lucky as to find a woman who loved me that much. I can't wait any longer. Bring me mighty Mjolnir, hammer of thunder, so I might use it to sanctify this marriage." The great doors to the hall swung open, and 100 of Thrym's strongest giants started dragging a cart into the room, with Mjolnir strapped to the middle. As soon as Freya, really Thor, saw the hammer, she, really he, burst out laughing. "Ha ha ha! Why are you laughing, my beauteous fiancé?" asked Thrym. "Has your 8-day journey made you delirious with joy to be marrying me?" "No, I am laughing because that is my hammer!" cried Thor. Ripping off the bridal veil and gown, he grabbed up Mjolnir and started bashing Thrym about the head with it. Fortunately, Thrym was a giant and therefore very, very tall, so it was hard for Thor to get a good whack in. All the other giants leapt to his defence and started throwing cakes at Thor to force him back. But mighty Thor would not be thwarted. "He bashed the cakes with his hammer?" asked Michael. "No, he ate the cakes with his mouth," said Nanny Piggins. And so, after winning the greatest food fight in all of Norse mythology, Thor returned home with his hammer. Well, Loki drove him home. He spent the whole trip back lying in the back of the goat cart, groaning because he had eaten so much cake. But he was also very happy that he had his beloved hammer back, so he wouldn't have to make a trip to Bunnings Hardware after all. The end. Time for bed. All right, well, that's it for this week. I hope you enjoyed that story. I'm not sure what I'm doing next week. I've had many requests and many reminders of things I said I was going to do that I haven't done yet. So we might be back to Greek mythology next week. Some people have been asking for Nemesis and Psyche and all those sorts of things. So I'll have a think about it, and I'm not sure what I'm doing next week, but hopefully I'll make it a good one. All right, well, that's it for now. Until next time, goodbye. Hello, it's me again. If you enjoyed listening to Bedtime Stories with R.A. Spratt, it would be really helpful if you could like, subscribe, follow, and or review the show on whatever podcast platform you're listening to now. Every little one of those digital affirmations helps, and the bigger this podcast gets, the more I can justify procrastinating from my real job to keep bringing these stories to you. Thank you.